It is 3:04 Eastern Time. I just got done watching Unrivaled, the Avalanche Red Wings rivalry beyond all rivalries documentary on E60. I have no one in my real life to talk to about this, so I gotta talk to you guys. I don't even know what this video is gonna be. I'm just gonna talk a little about the actual documentary itself. Figured I'd throw on the Avs. This is for Hayduk. This is a Hayduk jersey. He wasn't part of this until the later 90s, early 2000s, so he wasn't really part of the documentary at all. But it's the closest thing I have. I still want to get a Sakic and a Forsberg. Holy shit, kind of want an Osgood. I have a Waugh. Shit. I have a 1995 Waugh. 4 Waugh, so that doesn't really work. I am just on fire right now. On fire. Like, this was so much of my childhood, and I was young. I was young, barely able to really understand what was happening, especially for the early years of it. But it really set up my love of the sport, because the Boston Bruins were, let's call them a mixed bag at that time. And these two teams were just everything cool about hockey. They were everything that was impressive and dangerous and cool. And I think this documentary did a really great job highlighting that. This is going to have spoilers in it, so don't watch if you don't want anything spoiled. I mean, obviously it's history, so it's weird to say spoilers, but it is spoilers for stuff, especially if you're watching it to learn more about what happened. Things I forgot are in it. Try to watch, if you haven't already watched it, try to watch it without commercials. I had to use Fubo TV, and I don't actually subscribe to that. It was a free trial. I was a cord cutter, so I don't really have access to that stuff right now. And the commercials were like 6 to 7 minutes long, and they were terrible, and they split up the documentary in the worst ways, so that was frustrating, but the doc itself was great. And it starts off so perfectly with Mccarty just being the biggest douchebag. He's such a douche, and it's so good. It's so perfect, because the second he opens his mouth and he's being a jagoff, and it's not even intentional, but if you watched it from a certain side, he's just the biggest jerk. And vice versa, you're looking every time Lemieux opened his mouth, you're like, what a total ass, right? But he starts it, and he's so good on camera, so good. And all the memories just flood back of how much you were like, screw this guy. Screw him. He is the worst. But he was brilliant. He was so brilliant in this whole 2-hour thing that you just couldn't help but enjoy his personality. On top of that, from Lemieux's side, he did a lot of talking, and he definitely highlighted the way the teams felt and everything about it. Didn't have as much personality as Mccarty, but it was almost, Lemieux didn't have that same feeling of respect. Where Mccarty, the entire time, you could just see gushing out love of the sport and respecting the rivalry. Where it felt like Lemieux was still just almost in it. Almost, he was trying to defend himself and his actions, because he had a career where you could definitely sit there and go, all right, well, didn't fight a ton, like a turtle, which is very highlighted in the doc. Was a dirtier Marchand, which to some of you might actually make you scoff. He was just a guy that really went after people, and he was dirty. Don't get me wrong. Neither of these guys were very clean. But it was a weird feeling, especially watching from, hey, I cheered for the Avs in this rivalry, who eventually lost out because they didn't win as many cups as the Red Wings did. But you kind of had to respect the way that Mccarty handled everything with it. One thing I really want to highlight about the way this documentary went is very early on, it reminds you, and I totally forgot about this, I didn't forget about Adam Foote getting his brains bashed in, right? The Kozlov hit. I didn't forget that had happened, but I did forget two things about it. A, I forgot the amount of fucking blood this guy was gushing. And everyone's just like, oh, well, he'll be fine. And B, the non-call of anything in that. There was no call. 1996, guys. That's a long time ago, but the non-call with that. The game is so different now, because if there's blood like that, they're going to the cameras. They're calling a major immediately and trying to drop it. What a different world they were living in. Gushing blood. Foote was such a badass. I'm a big Adam Foote guy. Big Adam Foote guy. I thought he was so cool. Like, another guy who, during the documentary, was very, very held back, I thought. Don't think he really let loose. But boy, you would not want to be on the ice with that Easter Island head kind of guy. He is massive. God, he's massive. He looks intimidating. Oh, I'm such a Foote guy. And to know that he just, you have to recognize that Kozlov hit would never happen in the league today. Because we have all these replays and everything. Everyone knows they're being watched. But back then, you could take a guy's head and put it into the fucking glass, which wasn't smooth everywhere, and get away with it. Like, what an unbelievable reminder. And a lot of you, especially the older fans, are going to go, yeah, bud, welcome back to it. But if you consistently watched hockey over the last 20 years, we've all been kind of brought along this path of the game getting safer. Not softer, safer. I'm not saying softer. A lot of you guys would say softer, but safer. And you kind of forget how violent this past stuff was. Which brings us to the hit, which is probably half an hour into the actual documentary, with Lemieux just annihilating Draper. And again, you remember the hit. You remember the energy and feeling of it all. But what you don't remember is how it was so bad. It was a blatantly dirty, terrible, awful, no good hit. No good hit. And he gets 2 games, by the way. 2 games, because, Stanley Cup Finals and all. And Draper is just annihilated. And they made a big deal about this, about Lemieux never apologized. And even then, even today, you would never see that. They would always apologize. They would be forced by the team to apologize at a certain point. But even then, to not apologize at all, and to have it, big spoiler here, big spoiler, to have the documentary end on Draper confirming that he has never apologized. Ever. Just brilliant. Just brilliant. The emotions that go with that. It's awful. I'm not praising Lemieux for it. But if you want drama, that is your drama. Beautifully done. And then it takes another half an hour to build anticipation. The next season starts. They're talking about all sorts, how the seasons are going, the build up. First couple of games, Lemieux's not available for it. Third game, they're in Colorado. That fourth game, you're an hour into the documentary. All you've been waiting for is this fight night. Finally gets there. Builds the anticipation wonderfully. And it all floods back. The Mccarty nailing Lemieux when everyone's distracted by Forsberg and I'm gonna blank on the name, but they're going at it. And Waugh coming out because he sees Lemieux getting his absolute muffin beat in, just getting wrecked, and he starts skating out. And Shanahan sees this, jumps away from Adam Foote, which Shanahan was no small guy either. This was a dance partner. Really was. Sees it, goes after Waugh, and Waugh jumps. He fucking leaps into him and takes him down. They're sprawled on the ice. Here comes Mike Vernon, who has a fun history, is credited in some circles with Waugh moving away from the Canadiens, at least partially. They have a great history there, and they're going at it. And Vernon held his own, but Waugh probably got the better of him there, I'd say. And the whole fight, another memory that I didn't remember. No one got kicked from that game. No one. And the game kept going and going, and fights and fights and penalties and fights. No one got kicked. At least from that fight, no one got kicked. And then it goes to overtime. And the way they did this, they built to this fight. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh shit, we got to play the rest of the game. And the music selection, Machine Head, oh, it was such a wonderful, like almost music video of absolute 90s style hockey. It was gorgeous the way they put this together. And you couldn't help but this was your peak. This was your peak as a watcher. You were so in it. They win that game. The Red Wings win that game. Move on to winning the playoffs, win the Stanley Cup. Right? That's the big revenge. Is not only did we beat you guys finally in the regular season, because the Avalanche were 3-0 against them up to that point. They beat them right there. They go to the playoffs. They beat them there, and then they win the cup. And it's all groovy until 6 days after that cup. And this was something else, man. Pretty much the next 45 minutes of the documentary was highlighting the Constantinov injury and talking about it and including it in what was going on. They spent a large amount of time talking about it before they even got back to the hockey side of things. And I thought it was wonderfully handled and heart-wrenching. Just a brutal thing to remember. And a side that you don't normally see, because it's easy for us to forget about these athletes from the day-to-day, you know, the ones that, for whatever reason, left the league. We'll always remember that injury. Life-changing event. Calling it an injury seems so silly. But the difference being is the interviews with the players and everyone just going, we're not hockey players right now. We care about our friend. And it's just such a reminder that these guys are just that. The guys that we adore, we praise, we criticize, we toss around like they're numbers and they're data, and we throw that around. They're just guys. They're just men, some of them not even grown men, that are just trying to do what they can. And they're really good at this thing, and they get to make a lot of money doing it, and they make a living doing it, but it ain't easy. It ain't easy. And an event like this happens, it just reminds you that all of these people are just people. And it was heart-wrenching. And your eyes water up a bit. They probably should as you're watching this. And it gets right back to the action. And you're kind of shaking it off. And you're talking about the 1997 early season. Early in that 1997 year. And the fight between Lemieux and Mccarty. I completely forgot about that. I forgot that they had another go at it, where they stood on equal footing and went after each other. And then to see the respect that Mccarty had for him when he went, okay, I watched all that. I wasn't on my feet. Let's do this while I'm on my feet. I think you have to give a certain amount of respect to that, especially for Lemieux, who we've known as a turtler up to this point. He fought. It's not like he never fought, but he did turtle quite often. And it was right back to it. And then 1988, one of my all-time favorite moments as a kid, maybe the coolest fucking moment for a goaltender of all time that is not play-related. When Waz's skating out, it's another team brawl. And Waz's skating out, and he gets stopped by the ref, and he looks over, and there's Osgood down the ice. And he's skating forward a little bit. And he's kind of like, look, it's you and me if it's anybody. And Waz lifts that hand and goes, come on. Gets away from the ref. They go at it. Osgood wins the fight. Don't get me wrong. But what a cold moment. What a badass motherfucker. To sit there and just, come on. We're going to do this. Let's go. And they go at it. Goalie fights are incredible. They're amazing. They're beautiful. And you get to watch that moment of intensity. For anyone who's ever been in a fight, you know that feeling before the fight. And your heart goes crazy. And you know, for a moment, something's about to happen. And you don't have a lot of options. And I don't care who you say you are. But it's not like you're not nervous. It's getting into a fight is scary, man. Like, you're going to have a result, and you just hope the result favors you. I don't know if you can tell. I chose the wrong side. I'm missing a tooth up here. Like, sometimes you lose a fight. It happens. And you don't know what happens next after a lost fight. And these hockey players, especially back in the 90s, early 2000s, and obviously before, when they had to fight all the time, you were just hoping for a good result, and you did not know what the result was going to be all the time. And for goalies to do it, who so rarely fought, you can't tell me these guys weren't nervous. But they were so ready to fight for their squads. Oh, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. This whole documentary is beautiful. And in that season's final, that's the year that the Avalanche do not pull their side of the bargain. They don't meet the Red Wings in the playoffs that year. And the Red Wings go on to beat Washington in 4. And Constantinov is in the house. It was hard watching the videos of him recovering. It hurts to watch that. I'm a big softie in general. I'm kind of a big dude and hairy dude to be such a softie, but I am a softie. I feel that stuff. And it was really painful to watch him in the recovery and watch the people around him. But it was almost even more emotional. You can't say sad because it wasn't particularly sad. But the way that man smiled after this horrible brain injury, he couldn't really hold a conversation. He couldn't walk, couldn't do anything for himself at this point. But he's in that building, and everyone's excited about it. And the smile on his face just, I mean, if that doesn't get you a little bit, I don't know what will. It's one of those things that's way bigger than sports. And I like the way that Sakic put it, when talking about just, in that moment, for just a moment, you could be a Red Wings fan. And you really just loved watching him in the wheelchair going around the ice with the cup. And he couldn't really lift it himself, but the smile on his face, he knew what was going on. I thought that was such a great way to sort of finish the documentary, sort of finish it. Still had a little more moments between Lemieux and Mccarty and Draper, and I thought this was so well done, and I'm just giddy right now. I don't even know why I'm making this video. I'm just giddy, and I want someone to talk to about it. Just brilliant. Just absolutely brilliant. But there is one main point out of all of this that should be said. This was one of the bloodiest, most aggressive rivalries, if not the most, and I'll argue the most violent rivalries any sport has had in the modern game, right? NBA, you're not going to see this. Football, you won't see this. Baseball, certainly not. And that's not an insult to the sports. It's just not the way it's done. But as far as the major sports for North America go, this was it. This was maybe the last stand of the violent rivalry. The last big one. We will never see a rivalry this violent and hate-filled again in the sport of hockey. And that's probably a good thing because of the damage that was done. But it does kind of remind you of some pretty cool times, doesn't it? Again, it's a good thing. If you were on a team that cheered for Draper and you saw that hit and you saw the aftermath, as a person, you'd be upset. That being said, those men were badass. And the fact that they could even go on and play another series after a series like that against each other, multiple years. I mean, maybe they just don't make them like they used to, because that is unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. So, especially for my older watchers who really lived this, because I was young. I was young. I mean, The wah moment with Osgood, I was 5 years old, and I was so pumped up. Even then, I didn't really know what was going on. I've watched that highlight for 23 years. I've watched him call Osgood over. But especially from the people who really lived it, I want to hear your thoughts below. Write a fucking paragraph. I'll read it. I want to hear it. Because that was incredible.